Paranormal has always been a part of my life, and I had many experiences when I was young dealing with, shadow figures. I would hear voices, see things, but when you're young, you have other priorities. So it wasn't until about 2010 I decided to become a full-time investigator. So after a little while, going to cemeteries, doing sessions with voice recorder, I actually still use that voice recorder to this day. My dad, for my 14th birthday, January 9th, took me to the Staunton Train Depot in Staunton, Virginia. Now, as you can tell by the bullet points, I've made 5 return trips since then. 3 deaths are said to be responsible for the haunts, but what's really cool about this location, Staunton, Virginia, the town was founded in 1740. By a guy, if I remember right, John Lewis was his name, an explorer. There's a story not backed up by historical records, it's just hearsay. There used to be this witch. I'm trying to remember, there's this little community called Beverly Manor. There's a middle school there. Thankfully, I avoided that school. But she was also said to have moved in that area about 10 years after John did. And she was said to be a very, very powerful witch. And her and John Lewis did not get along at all. In fact, the town I live in, she built a few of the houses, had them built. And she was tried a few times for illegal activities, but the weird thing was, no matter how much evidence the attorneys could present to prove her guilt, she always got off scot-free. And people always assumed it was witchcraft. That's one of the main reasons she was known as a witch. So that's also why some people believe out of all the places in Augusta County, he chose Staunton, Virginia to settle, is because, the witch, a lot of times the witches during that time, they'd be attracted to certain areas due to certain energies. They believe that certain energies pull people to certain areas, whether it's good or bad or even ugly. And some people think John Lewis stayed away from there because there was bad energy, and that's what drew the witch in. So Staunton, about the time of the 1870s, 1880s, had the highest murder rate in the entire world. Over Chicago, over London, Paris, New York, all these places. It was the worst. One of the reasons for this was you had so many bars in this 1.5 mile radius, and typically, angry young men and alcohol doesn't really go well together. So the railroad was put in 1855. It was key for that area because Staunton was somewhat of a small town up until 1855. It was kind of the center of Augusta County, which Augusta County at that time stretched all the way towards Rockridge, Rockingham, that kind of area. I'm probably getting a few of those names mixed up, but that's all right. So when the railroad came through, Staunton went from this to this. And it brought all sorts of new industries in. You had not just these little mom and pop shops, you had bars come in. You had the theater came in. And so the railroad was extremely important. Now, come time of the Civil War, the railroad was important because it was the first stop outside of Richmond. And it also had a line that connected directly to Washington, D.C. So after the Battle of Bull Run, when the Confederate Army was moving a lot of troops from the south up to the north, they were doing it through Staunton. So throughout the entire war, this railroad depot was the site of many Union attacks. And it was actually destroyed by Union General David Hunter in 1864 for the very first time. And when it was destroyed, there are some claims that there were some arguments that broke out. Some people were shot up along through here, but once again, it's hearsay. The first big death occurs here in 1861. It's this man named D.C. McClurry. Now, he's from Arkansas. He's about 19 years old, and as soon as the war breaks out, he's pumped. He, is all about the Southern cause, Southern independence. And some of his friends from school joined the Confederate Army. They joined, if I remember right, it was the 7th Arkansas Regiment. And so he goes with them. They go up to Staunton, and the way it worked Confederate Army is you would come into Staunton, you would get one night to live it up, basically. Because after this, you're going to be going through hell, basically. So his night of fun ended pretty early because he went to a bar that actually still stands to this day. He had a few too many, got in an argument, decided to walk it off. He decided to walk it off at these train tracks. So in his drunken state, he's walking around, probably stumbling like this, can't hear, probably talking to himself. And trains used to come from this way, going this way, but now they come from that way. He didn't see the train coming, and it hit him head on. And instantly after that, a few years, they would report a Confederate soldier. Even about 1863 was the first report of seeing a Confederate soldier greet other soldiers up on the tracks. Now, the second death that occurred up here was this man named William McMeacham. Now, he's a very interesting case if you know the history of Staunton. Is anyone here familiar with the eugenics movement of Virginia in the 1920s? Dr. DeJarnette, some of the sanatoriums. Well, McMeacham had fought in every major battle of the American Civil War. And then after the war, he went out to Colorado, and he was huge in the mining business. He's very rich. Well, while he was out there, he had an affair. And his wife somehow in West Virginia found out about it through probably, 19th century social media. Don't know how that works. But she took the kids and ran away to southern West Virginia. And so he went crazy, literally, and he was instituted into Western State, which at the time was about 40 some odd years old, 50 some odd years old. And they had a new doctor by the name of Dr. Joseph DeJarnette. Now, DeJarnette was supposed to be this new up-and-coming doctor. He was trying new methods. He was supposed to be the guy that was going to change everything at Western State. And so William McMeacham was put under the care of Dr. Joseph DeJarnette. Now, McMeacham wasn't crazy. He just had moments. One moment he'd be telling Dr. DeJarnette about the Battle of Gettysburg, talking about his commanders, every little detail, stuff we as Civil War historians would love. And then the next moment he'd be telling you about him and God taking walks in the garden, and he'd be dead serious. So Western State, something they did at the time was, it was kind of like it was a 24-hour grace period. If a patient was deemed sane enough by 19th century standards, they could go out into downtown Staunton, and if they could survive 24 hours without getting killed, causing problems, or anything like that, mainly they wanted them to find a job, find some people that could back up their sanity credibility. I don't think that's a term, but we'll use that one. And if you could pass the 24-hour test, you were free to go. No problems. So William McMeacham was granted his 24 hours. At this point, he was about 60 some odd years old. He was deaf partially. He had issues seeing. And for some reason, he decided to take a stroll on these tracks, as a lot of soldiers do. And kind of like your good friend D.C. McClurry, he, kissed a train, putting it lightly. And apparently it affected DeJarnette so much he actually didn't have patience for 2 more months because he was reeling from that. Now, the third death is the most tragic one. It's of this girl by the name of Myrtle Knox. She ran away from home in Kansas City, Missouri, and she joined this Oscarlette troupe. Now, what's really interesting about the Oscarlette troupe is Staunton had never had opera come to it before. And Staunton they were starting to really get into the arts. They were trying to be a very progressive community. And so you had, they were actually the first theater in the whole county to have a talkie movie theater. So anything that was seen as progressive in the eyes of society, Staunton was all on top of it. And so when the Oscarlettes became popular in the late 1800s, actually 1890, they instantly invited them. And so in between their shows in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Washington, D.C., they made a stop in Staunton. Now, they were supposed to be there on April 27th at 12 o'clock. Actually, 11:30 is when their train was supposed to come in. It was a late train. So the whole town, because they were excited, and they probably had nothing better to do, they're all lined up on this wharf. They estimated about 200 to 300 people were lined up here. Banners, they had torches, they had lights, they had cameras, they had everything waiting for this troop to come in. So 11:30, no train. 1 o'clock, no train. People are starting to get a little worried. By the time, late trains, it wasn't uncommon. So it gets to about 2:30 in the morning on April 28th, 1890. And they see a light coming from a distance. Now, the way trains used to come through here, I don't have a photo to show you this, unfortunately, but there is a very long, straight stretch that goes about, I would say about 250 yards, and then it goes around another bend near this copse of trees. So they notice on the copse of trees, they see this illumination, this light. So they're like, okay, that's the front light of the train. Well, it turns out it wasn't the front light of the train. The entire train was on fire. About 2 miles out, there's a hill. And as the train was going down the hill, the conductor lost control of the brakes. And there was an explosion, and the whole train, the engine car and the coal car, caught fire. So you have this runaway train that's coming through here, and actually where I took this photo, not terribly long ago, is close to where the train derailed. It's coming through, and somewhere along these tracks, it flipped up. But the weird thing was the locomotive, the engine, all that stuff, it continued to go around, and it was only the last 2 cars derailed. Not seriously, the car before the last one derailed up onto here, but kept going, and actually took out some of these posts. But the last car, which was a sleeper car, which had the Oscarlettes, it flipped completely on its side and leaned up against here and actually ejected some of the passengers that were sleeping, Oscarlettes, out onto the platform. So the whole town's freaking out. And the train's still going. It actually went about 200 yards down the track before it finally stopped. And they're going through the damage. Some people have broken limbs, some people are, traumatized, but nothing too serious. Until they get to this rubble, somewhere in this area is my estimate based upon newspaper accounts, where they find Miss Myrtle Knox. And she's bleeding out because she has a spike going through her thigh. And the problem with that was, at the time, aside from that's kind of not good, Staunton didn't have a hospital in town, which is kind of crazy to think. They had little clinics, and they figured, we can just live with these mom and pop clinics for a while, nothing crazy is going to happen. Well, something crazy happened. And Myrtle Knox actually bled to death on the platform because they didn't know where to take her. Everywhere was closed, everyone was up here. So they found a King's Daughter necklace around her neck, and they actually started the King's Daughter Hospital in her honor, which is still functioning today. But Myrtle Knox, out of all the spirits, is said to be the most active. I've had many encounters with what I believe is Myrtle Knox. My dad has, my mom has. But the main reason we went out to this location is because it's a great location for training. And that's pretty much what it was the first few times we went there. We went there January 9th, 2014, which it was about 33 degrees outside. It was freezing cold. One of the dumbest investigations I've ever done because, we almost became a ghost that night. But my dad showed me how to conduct EVP sessions in an investigation type setting because, if you've ever been on an investigation, it's very different when you're just at a cemetery walking around. Is anyone here? What's your name? And then when you're actually in a location, you're set down, you have your equipment set up, you've got your perimeters, you've got everyone gathered around. There's a big difference. And so the investigator I am today is because of this depot. And also, whenever we get new equipment, still this day, I always take it here. Not just because it's tradition, but because it is one of those locations. Every time I've been there, I've always gotten something interesting.